This is not the Star Wars game you've been looking for. Let's talk. When Star Wars Battle of Hoth was announced from Days of Wonder, in the lines of your Commands and Colors and your Memoir 44 reskin, essentially, people were rightly very skeptical of whether or not this game could set out and accomplish what it's trying to do in the first place, with an emphasis on the light side of the war gaming aspect. Now, with the Star Wars theme, you always got to put a little asterisk on these games, because what ends up happening is you start to get the thematic overload, fanboy-gasm, outweighing the, you know what, is this actually a good, or I dare say, great mechanistic game? So therein lies the core dilemma of this. Can you separate those two things out? Well, you can. But truth be told, this isn't the Star Wars game you're looking for. It's not. It is, at its heart, a dice chucker skirmish with 3 different types of units per side, with a maximum number of units on each half. Totally driven by a random card draw of the slight asymmetric action placement cards that you have available to you, which is also going to be incredibly luck driven in terms of when you draw which area, lane, if you will, you can actually maneuver. In the very straightforward line of sight, roll a certain number of dice to knock things out if you roll the right side at the right time at the right enemy. Does that sound like an enticing encapsulation of the Star Wars thematic universe? Especially now, then, that you take it, you isolate it, and you try to drag it through the mud that is the Battle of Hoth. Overwhelmingly and outstandingly, the answer is yes, actually. Because this is a game that, on its surface, with all of those descriptions I just mentioned, should not work. It really should not be as encapsulating and enthralling as it is. And again, as I alluded to at the beginning, right, can you really separate out the stylistic mechanisms that the previous systems mentioned at the beginning, overwhelmingly that this gathers its influences from? Because very similarly, like the Smash, overwhelmingly exceeding the high expectations hype of 2024 in the form of Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, which somehow took the Seven Wonders duel and transformed it even to something better and overachieving those expectations-based hurdles. This does a similar, yet oddly confusing and rapturing Star Wars-based thematic experience. And like I said, the dice in this, the random draw from a relatively large-sized deck, should be completely off-putting, which ultimately overrides the strategic element of this very tactical, but also very, very fortune-favoring the bold and the lucky style of game. Head-to-head, as the Rebel Alliance versus the Empire, you're going through up to 18 different scenario-based skirmish one-offs, or several campaign options to link them together to slowly upgrade your deck depending on winners and losers. And the core is still the same. Achieve victory points. Achieve an objective on the map. Upgrade your characters in the form of elite troops, or potentially move around little blasters that allow you to transport them, but have to break them down and set them up. Units only score you those precious victory points, though, after you knock out the last one standing in an area. So as long as one has legs underneath it, you don't have the points, and you also leave your opponent with a chance to retaliate. Nothing screams Star Wars like, first one to get the most points wins! So in theory, the activation of this many units in this zone on a simple move action system should not be working as well as it is. But the slight variance of the text at the bottom of the card, the nuance of choosing one of 3 potential leaders per side to spice up the deck just a wee bit, somehow prevents the monotony of a single-based Hoth game from becoming stale. And part of that is evident by the elegance in the simplicity. There's no overthought, complex, convoluted, intricate line of sight or terrain or even unit specifications. This many units in an area, this much to take a damage to knock one out, roll a specific side on the die in order to do so, crystal clear explanation cards of all of those things that you're going to possibly need on a turn-by-turn, round-by-round basis. And again, the attention to detail is pervasive, because I didn't think I'd be complimenting many a retail game, let alone this one, stored with miniatures to make Simon blush comparatively to how crappy they do it, with actual good storage components to go along with it, that not only make the game fit away nicely, but help me get it to the table easier too. WTF is going on here? I'm not used to having these compliments come at a retail side of things. Now, that's not without criticisms, because these stupid card holders are a bunch of extra wasted plastic in my opinion. But maybe if you want to not have to hold your cards in your hand when you're playing at 3 or 4, you're not going to play this at 3 or 4 players. Who am I kidding? It still suffers, though, let's be completely clear, on the lack of mitigation available to you with these random dice rolls, where it is not able to necessarily modify the sides of your dice as much as you'd like. The number of dice is more manipulatable depending on the distance between you, your enemies, as well as the cards that you're going to be utilizing along the way. And that is the balancing act that you have to say, is this worth it? Just like you're doing on a choice-by-choice, battlefield-driven situation of, can I take a pot shot from extra space or 2 away and risk less dice? Or is it worth getting close, going a little all Captain America in the elevator hand-to-hand combat style, and risking not only the potential units, but even the victory points that go along with demolishing the total number of units in that area in the first place. And that's probably the other big main criticism. As you're knocking these units off and gathering your victory points in various metal formations depending on the scenario, how many you need, and dealing with the Empire's overwhelming might, numbers, and tactical superiority, the rebels often subvert that expectation by just needing less victory points to keep it a little bit balanced, which is fine, but it's also slightly anticlimactic at times if you can just snatch victory from the jaws of defeat by rolling lucky to knock out the last unit in an area in order to score that one victory point, as opposed to, more of a directed, instead of just smash, bash, crash, knock them out the most and the most quick. It gives some variation in these scenarios. But again, is it going to be enough for you? And that leads into the last boon and curse, right? Like I said, I didn't expect the encapsulation of Hoth to actually work with this many scenarios. I said before I got this game, this is going to be freaking repetitive and stupid. We're going to be doing the same thing over and over again in every single scenario, in every single dungeon crawl, where it's just go there, do this, knock out these guys, rinse and repeat. And this does have enough variation, but ultimately it is still that at its core, which both begs the question that is just on the tip of my tongue ever since this was first announced. If this is Hoth, what's next? If you only give me several different types of tokens to utilize on the board, if you only give me 3 different main types of units per side, what else do you have in store for me? Because that ultimately is going to be whether or not my appetite is whetted appropriately at the end of the day. And really, I mean at the end of deciding whether or not this game will stand up the test of time. Not 6 months from now, check. Not a year from now, check. But 2 or 3 years from now, when we see other combinations, other systems, is this going to be more of a Star Wars deck building style of things where you just put out standalone expansion after standalone expansion? Or are you going to allow me the integration that this system so desires, craves, and deserves in order to keep it in my collection? The chef's kiss of this game is going to be dependent on whether the terrain tiles, the leaders, and the asymmetric units can be expounded on, expanded on, and integrated as well as it currently is with a Hoth-based situation. But my fear is that because this is so Hoth-centric, that future is going to make this not necessarily obsolete, but alongside. So right now, it's a no-brainer. But the long-standing test of time in massive collections is going to be the unknown. And so that's ultimately going to depend on what Days of Wonder has in store for us in this regard. But if you hold the quality with future content of this game to the same standard that has been set already in terms of the production, the smooth gameplay, and the slow layering of additional elements that I've alluded to and mentioned, this will be a great, great game. But the jury is still a little bit out on whether or not that will be done. If this is never supported again, if Days of Wonder forgets that they own the Star Wars IP in the first place, and they haven't done 37 other expansions of those previous Commands and Colors and Memoir 44s that they can do similarly with this, is this one still worth buying and owning right now? All in all, though, I love it, but it's got a few hanger-oners there that you need to think about whether or not it's right for you, because again, chances are, if you're looking for an incredibly thematic, incredibly strategic, just blow your mind, knock your socks off Star Wars game, this is, like I mentioned, not going to be that. Does it mean it's not as good, though? Not necessarily. It's just providing you a little bit different taste than maybe what you were looking for initially. And sometimes that surprise taste is the best one of all. Thanks for watching. Stay classy. Peace out.